about is parenting styles. This is different from attachment. Attachment is often focusing on the infant's response. And now we're going to talk more about the parental behaviors. And so we're talking about parenting styles. We have to start this conversation off by talking about Diana Bornstein and Diana Bornstein's types of parenting styles. So working in the 1960s, Bornstein was looking at sort of how strict or how lenient parents could be. And her early works focused on 3 distinct types of styles that were on the spectrum from being strict on one end to being really lenient on the other end. So she labeled these as permissive, authoritative, and authoritarian. And so permissive is really what we, in the Goldilocks story, would be a parent who's too soft. Sometimes this is the jellyfish parent. And so this is the idea that they are soft like cotton candy or soft like pillows. It's easy to shape them and mold them into what you want. So you don't want the parent to be too moldable. We know the parent-child relationship is very bi-directional. And if the parent's too soft and lenient, well, the child's going to manipulate and fold that parent into what they want. And so what's happening here is they, give their kid lots of candy. They don't have bedtimes. They don't have to go to school. They don't have to do any chores. They cave in. They never have to learn negotiation skills. And so they get whatever they want. At the other extreme end, the authoritarian in the Goldilocks story would be called too hard. And these are the parents that are very inflexible. They are sturdy, all right, but they're as sturdy as a bowling ball and a stack of bricks. And there's no flexibility there. So this is the idea that they are who they are and they're not going to cave regardless of the situation. And this is going to make life hard for the kid because they're not really responding to their child in any way. They just are setting expectations and you must oblige. And so this is kind of making a rule, but with no explanation for the rule or no understanding of the rule. This is just the rule and you have to live with it. And so this is going to teach the kid that they also don't get to negotiate. They also don't get to, kind of communicate their needs. They just have to do whatever the authority figure wants them to do. Versus in the middle, in the Goldilocks story, this is our just right zone, and this is the authoritative zone. This is when the parent is like a top of a drum. It's sturdy, you can make noise on it, but it also has a little bit of flexibility there. Or it's bouncy like a tennis ball. It's a firm tennis ball, but it also has some bounce to it, it has some give to it. And if you kind of reuse those two material, you stay who you are, but with some flexibility. And so this is the idea that they have rules, but they have some flexibility. The child cannot completely mold them into who they want, but they're not super rigid and inflexible either. And so she considered that to be just right. Now, of course, the dialogue with parenting is ever shifting, ever changing, and social norms when she first created this that were considered authoritative might actually be strict nowadays, about 60 years later. We also find sometimes when we're talking about being an authoritative parent, the just right parent, and some people hear us as being flexible, they misinterpret this that we're going to be all the way permissive. So it depends on the social norms you grew up in, it depends on sort of what you're familiar with. What one person deems as too rigid, another person might deem as too flexible, but there is this idea, the notion of the happy medium at some point. So building on the work by Diana Bornstein was the work by Eleanor Maccabee and John Martin. And they said, instead of just one spectrum from permissiveness to authoritarianism or really strictness to really relaxedness, there really needs to be 2 spectrums. And those 2 spectrums were demandingness and responsiveness, or control and warmth, respectively. And so the idea is that parents that are high in demandingness and high in responsiveness are going to offer lots of rules, but also lots of warmth. And this is going to be the authoritative parent, or the drum parent, who's flexible, but still lays out boundaries and rules and still disciplines their kids, but in a very loving and transparent way. For the parents who are high in demandingness but low in responsiveness, this is going to be the brick wall parents. These are going to be the really inflexible parents. They have very strict rules and you can't learn to give with that. And so this is going to teach the kids that there's no sense negotiating. You can't negotiate with a brick wall. And that they have a very much an outlook that authority figures are very strict and they don't care about your feelings, they care about the rules. The opposite of that is going to be the parents that are low in demandingness but high in responsiveness, and that's going to be the parents considered permissive, or the jellyfish, cotton candy, pillow parents. And these are the parents that are soft and loving and gooey and just give the kids too much of what they want. So these are the parents that are saying, oh, what do you want, honey? I'll give you everything. And they never ask anything of the child in return. And so these are the parents who just spoil the child. Of course, this is when we see a lot of spoiling, where there's not a lot of rules and lots of giving kids what they want. So they're always constantly bribing them or giving them what they want. And then we have the parents that are low in both responsiveness and demandingness. They're not offering a lot of warmth and they're not offering a lot of control. And these are really what Maccabee would describe as the neglectful or the uninvolved parents. These are the parents who are like ghosts. They're not there. They're a figment of your imagination. They're not there to guide you and explain things to you. They're not there to support you. They're not there to reassure you. The kid is really left on their own. And so these are the parents that are not really parenting at all. They're more of an absentee parental figure. So these 4 types of parenting have been used through much of the research to understand these different segments and the different outcomes. But that being said, we've also added a few new types of parenting. Perhaps we could add even a 3rd spectrum or a 3rd dimension to this chart. So with the work of Foster Cline and Jim Fay, we've added a new parenting style to our vocabulary, helicopter parenting. And so with helicopter parenting, this is not so much about demandingness or responsiveness. This is a 3rd spectrum altogether, and this is autonomy support. So autonomy support is how well you support your child trying things on their own. If you take them to the playground and they're struggling and they're going to fall off the slide, do you run over and protect them? Well, it has to be age appropriate. An infant who's just learning to walk, maybe you are going to protect them. A 5-year-old, maybe you're going to let them stumble and fall. How often do you help them with their homework? When they're just in grade 1, it's their first year at school, maybe you're going to help them a lot. But by the time they're in grade 7, maybe you're going to let them struggle and figure it out a little bit on their own. And so Cline and Fay really argued that there's a certain level of autonomy that's age appropriate, and how well parents support that can really change the dynamic of the parenting style as well. And so a helicopter parent is often used to describe a parent who hovers over their child. They are very intrusive, very preoccupied with what their child is doing. They tend to over-monitor their child's academic and social and extracurricular well-being. They tend to over-monitor what's going on. Now, we know there's lots of conversations today about dangerous places on the internet and in gaming and in apps. And so certainly doing appropriate levels of monitoring your kid is not helicopter parenting. Helicopter parenting is going beyond the monitoring a child needs for their age. So this is the idea that perhaps when your child is 22, you're still screening all their text messages. That would probably be overdoing it. So if autonomy support is allowing them to be independent, a lack of autonomy support is kind of smothering or babying or not providing age-appropriate autonomy to your child. And so this has a couple different names. Some people call this a tiger parent. Some people call this a steamroller parent, because a steamroller parent also smooths out any trouble the child may have in the way. And so this is the idea that you're not allowing your child to develop coping techniques. You see a potential struggle, you see a potential hurdle coming up, and you smooth it out so they don't have to deal with it. So you see potential conflicts and you resolve it. We know that it's actually healthy for kids to learn to resolve their own sibling rivalry conflicts, their own friendship conflicts, as well as some conflicts between their teachers and as things get older. There's times when kids are being chronically bullied or cyberbullied or other things of that nature where it's not okay, and they need an adult to help them step in. But if there's mild kind of friendship conflicts, it's really good to have kids learn to resolve that on their own and not have the parent constantly step in. Maybe the first few times that the kid's uncertain, it's okay to have the parent model or suggest some things, or if the child wants to talk with the adult with suggestions about how to handle it, that's totally okay. What's not okay is if the parent always picks up the phone and works it out with the other child's parents. The kids have to learn to work it out for themselves at some point. Now, in terms of these parenting styles, whether we're looking at demandingness, responsiveness, or autonomy support, we find there is a lot of outcomes. That kids that actually have all three, their parents have a high to moderate level of demandingness, a high level of responsiveness, and a high level of support for their own independence and autonomy, we find those kids with that perfect blend, they turn out, on average, pretty good. They tend to have low levels of delinquency, they tend to have superior communication skills, superior conflict resolution and coping skills as well. They tend to report higher levels of mental well-being, higher levels of happiness, higher levels of resilience and persistence. Academically, they also like school. They'll be more motivated to achieve for their own selves. They show a lot of high academic competence where they believe in themselves and high academic self-esteem. They also show objectively higher ability in literacy and numeracy tests, and they have better social perceptive taking skills such as theory of mind.